welcome to our Q&A tonight with James Iverson and Olivieri. I guess I'll start while we wait for people to come in. We're gonna maximum go about an hour. We're not gonna time it because there's only 2 candidates today. They're both running for District 4. They'll both give an opening statement. I'll ask them a couple questions, and then they'll have a closing statement. In the meantime, in the chat, if you have questions, please put your questions in the chat. If you could put a Q or the word question before your question so that Judy can see the questions more easily and discern them from comments. Judy Aronson is my co-host. She's also admin in Indivisible, and Scott is our what is it? Front door man. What do you call him when you keep people out?
Oh, the
bouncer. He's our bouncer.
Sergeant of Arms. Yes.
They're bouncer. So I don't anticipate any. I think this is going to be a really good session tonight. I'll tell you why. These 2 gentlemen served coffee today at Will's place together. They sent me a picture. They've been nothing but complimentary to each other. It's amazing. I think they should take the picture of them serving coffee and put it on a sign and say vote for either one of us. But they spoke very well about each other, and so it's really refreshing to see 2 candidates behave like we don't normally see. I've known James for a long time, from running into downtown Skokie. We've had a beer together in the past. We've volunteered at places together, and I recently met Eddie. I think I ran into him at Sketchbook, but we had talked on the phone. We were at an event, and then we had coffee, and he reminds me a lot of myself one time. So that being said, I think it's 7:33. This is being recorded. I think we'll start the Q&A now. Everyone's ready?
Hold on one second. Lonnie, I'd like to add to that if you don't have your name on your square, if you're going to put a question in the Q&A, in the chat, we need to have you put your name and your location, just to be fair to everybody else. Thank you.
Thanks, Judy. We learn as we go along. I don't know if did I mention Scott? Scott's also an admin. Thank you for helping us, Scott, letting everyone in and being our bouncer. Okay, well, I don't know. We haven't flipped a coin. Who wants to go first? Eddie, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us who you are and why you're running?
Yeah, wonderful. So first off, thank you to Indivisible for hosting this event and the other events. It's a really, really wonderful opportunity for us as candidates to be able to speak to voters, answer people's questions, and allow you guys to learn a little bit more about us. My name is Eddie Olivieri. I'm a candidate for District 4 Trustee. I've lived in Skokie for about 11 years now. I live in the Fairview neighborhood. I'm married. I have 2 children who go to Fairview. I'm an attorney by trade, but I work for a technology company right now. I have a very varied background, and I'm running for trustee because this neighborhood is really incredibly special to me. We've been able to make very, very close and dear friends. My children have been able to make close and dear friends. We just love this place. My kids get to be cared for by people who speak many different languages, who look different, who sound different, who have different experiences. And it's an incredibly enriching environment. And we have an outstanding school. And we've been blessed to have a government in Skokie that has been led by very wise and committed people. And that's why this village is so well run. In this time of transition, I realize that there's an opportunity for me to share my gifts and to add my value to the village of Skokie and to build upon the outstanding base that we've been entrusted with. And so my experience and background is very heavy in government. I started my career as a prosecutor, Cook County State's Attorney's Office, And then I was an attorney in private practice, doing mostly criminal defense, immigration, represent a lot of small businesses. Ultimately, I led the Cook County Office of Contract Compliance, which is the office that administers the Minority and Women Business Program for Cook County government. And now I work for a technology company where I specialize in public sector procurement law. The one of the main values that I add is that small business and entrepreneurship is something that is very central to my life. I'm an entrepreneur myself. My wife is as well. Many of our family and friends are, and we have a thriving small business community in Skokie, and there's more that can be done. And so I plan on investing a lot of my time in fostering that small business community as well, not just for those businesses, but also for our young people to see the aspiration, right, where they can see themselves as entrepreneurs and as job creators, and as people who can participate in the economy such that they can give their children an even better life than we're able to give to them. And so that is my 100% commitment, is to making sure that I am accessible, that I listen to people, and that we put the priorities of the village that benefit the most amount of people first. And so I'm grateful to be here, and I'm thankful for your all participation.
Thank you, Eddie. James, you're up.
Thanks. Thanks, Lonnie, and thanks, Eddie. As you know, as you listen to Eddie, describing himself, I think it's, easy to understand why it's easy for us to get along, or at least it's easy for me to like and respect Eddie. A reason why I'm interested in running for trustee in Skokie is because the people that have been in government, that serve government, that volunteer in the village, are people that I really like and I really admire, and I like to be around them. The mayor is retiring, and he certainly deserves it, but I've really admired him. I'm going to miss him, and I was actually excited by the idea that I might actually be able to work with him. But anyway, my point is that there's great people that serve our village, and it's an incredible blessing. And I like these people, and I like to be around them, and that's one of the reasons I'm doing this. Now, my own history is my family. We moved up to Skokie. We already had 4 sons when we moved up to Skokie, and we came to Skokie because we had my wife's parents living with us, and we were in Lincolnwood, and so we just came right out Lincoln Avenue. What we wanted was a multi-unit building, and the affordability. Well, and we were drawn into Skokie because of the affordability of multi-unit dwellings. And of course, it had great schools, great library, the police, right? Skokie had everything that we wanted, and it had the affordability. And we've always been attracted by an old-fashioned downtown, small town values, small businesses. We've always been attracted to that, and the nature of the community in Skokie, which is certainly much more diverse, but very open and warm. This is what drew us up into Skokie, and that was, 15, 20 years ago. And so my sons grew up here, and they've all passed through the school systems. They did fine in the Skokie schools. They did, I would say, average among their friends. But as they went out into the world, they were so well prepared for everything that they did. They were so well educated and strengthened and prepared. So the Skokie schools did an incredible job for my family. My oldest boy is now a doctor in Texas, and he's a captain in the Army. Number 2 is Nicholas is autistic, and it's another thing about Skokie. We specifically chose Skokie because Skokie is a place where you can be different and people are okay with it. They're not weird about it. They're not patronizing about it. They're just right. They're just right. And that's Will's place, where Eddie and I were this morning. It's a great example of that. They're professional and serious about the work that they do. And anyway, so that Nick is now a nurse's aide. He's a certified nursing assistant, that is, a CNA, union work, union pay. It is so far beyond the dreams of parents like us. It's an incredible accomplishment. And as you learn more about Eddie's resume, you'll learn some of the special skills he has along that very line as well. Then number 3, Sam, his wedding is next weekend. We're heading down immediately after the forum on Tuesday. The next morning, we head down for his wedding in South Carolina. He left the Army as a sergeant, and now he's about to graduate as an electrical engineer, and he's getting married. And then number 4 is coming in from Hawaii for the wedding. He's a lieutenant and a civil engineer and a ordnance officer. And anyway, so our family has been very, very blessed by Skokie, but Skokie has elements. Skokie has characteristics that are extremely special and extremely unique. There are very few communities that could have served our family the way Skokie has. And Skokie has the right ambitions, and I think Skokie is well governed. But I've seen the small business community struggle and suffer. I have seen a lot of Skokie residents and businesses feel neglected and disregarded. And so I am a little concerned about the small business community. We've met with a lot of politicians on the subject of what can be done to stop the decay experienced by small business. And so that is a concern of mine. But the main thing for me, and I know I'm rambling too much, the main thing for me is that this village has been just really good for our family, the way it is for so many families. And it's really special. Nobody else has it. Nobody else has this set of characteristics, and it's special.
Thank you, James. Maybe you could borrow my son for a while. He's still in college.
Send him over.
He's on the 7-8 year program. In his defense, he has ADHD and he couldn't do the Zoom during the pandemic. So you both mentioned about being involved in government. I'd like to know, have you gone to what your engagement is with Skokie's government? And I'd also like to ask you about the pledge that you received from Citizens for Ethical Campaigns and whether or not you agree to sign it and whether or not you agree to call out disinformation from a secondary source if I receive a mailer in the mail that says something that's not true about your opponent. James, you want to go first?
Sure. First off, regarding the ethical campaign pledge, that was given to me at the same time with the petitions, and so that was part of the packet that I dropped off. You know, when I dropped off the petition with the clerk. It. Yeah, I did. Of course, I signed it, and and it's a wonderful thing. I think Denise Wang Stonebeck is a really special person, and kind of a loss to our community that she's gone. But
you would agree to correct disinformation if a secondary source disseminated that? Yes.
Absolutely. Okay. And I think it's, tragic that it happens. And I think it's also really good that it happens, not as often in Skokie as I'm sure it does elsewhere.
Well, it started happening here a few years ago, and I think we're sick and tired of seeing a nasty politics at this point. And do you attend village board meetings? Are you involved with the village and commissions or anything?
No, I do attend board meetings. I go to a lot of board meetings. I've done that. And, I live right across the street. So it's not hard for me to get across to the board meetings. And as I mentioned, I like being around these people. So yeah, I go to the board meetings, but I've not been on commissions. I've not been on a school board. But my involvement has been really through the business community. When one of the first things I got involved with in Skokie, because when we moved up to Skokie, number one was to have a multi-unit building. And then number two was Gloria said, let's start this candy store so that Nick will have a place to work. And so I did that. We did that. And my job was to kind of help make sure all that happened, right? Do the permits and what have you. And in that process, actually, the village didn't reach out to me first, but I don't hold that against them. The fact is, the person who reached out to me first was Randy Miles from the Village Inn and Linda Bouvalam, if you remember her. And they reached out right away and they said, we're doing this. And then there's going to be a cookie thing. And then there's going to be, characters dressed up like Disney princesses going around and singing songs. And it was really engaging. It was beautiful. And that's what got us started in Skokie, is that we're sucked into all of this fun, wholesome fun. And through Randy, we were engaging with the village because the village did want to play a role to support and help what was going on. But really, it was iMods was the driving factor at that point.
Remember them, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, James. Eddie, do you attend your board meetings as well? And
I do. So I regularly attend board meetings. I also signed that pledge, and at the time I filed my petitions, and I was happy to do that because I think that negativity in politics is ubiquitous, and it's really problematic and it's really toxic, particularly on a local level where we live together, we eat out together, our children play together, our children may fall in love with each other. It's really, really important that we communicate and we engage in a civil way. And so Jim and I have both been very intentional about making sure that, though we are opponents for this particular office, on April 2nd, the election will be over with, but Jim and I will still be neighbors and we'll still be friends. And so we want to show, we want to model to other people who are running for office, both locally in Skokie, but elsewhere as well, that you can run against one another for an office. We can be competitors and still be friends and be civil and do things together. And so, Jim was kind enough to invite me to share the guest barista spot this morning. We had a wonderful, wonderful time. And I really think that that's what makes Skokie special, because I see that on a regular basis amongst, my neighbors here. And so that code of ethical conduct is something I 100% embrace. I'm not going to do any negative campaigning. And I'm very ready, willing, and able to call out disinformation to the extent that I identify it. Was there something more to that question that I may have missed?
no, you got it.
Yeah.
So there's that eyesore now that's sitting in the middle of downtown Skokie. We all know what I'm talking about. What do you propose you can do about that? You live right near there. It's in your area.
Yeah, you're speaking to me, Lonnie.
Yes.
Yeah. So what to do about it? Yeah, you remember not the first eyesore. How long did we have that crane sitting in the empty lot? And I remember when they tore down the Desiree. And I might be a fool for regretting that the Desiree got torn down, but in my experience, a lot of contractors and a lot of ambitious contractors much prefer to tear down than rehabilitate. Anyway, that project resulted in a vacant lot and a crane for 2 years. And, it worked out well in the end, but at great expense to the village. And I feel like there were much better solutions that could have been implemented without the cost and perhaps at a greater benefit to downtown Skokie. Now, that hotel, which seems like a very reasonable project to undertake. However, from the get-go, the demands they placed upon Skokie were significant. If they demanded that much help, I feel as though that process needed to be perhaps reconsidered. Anyway, that said, now our bet is made. And as far as I understand, this is stuck in the courts as the interested, invested parties are fighting over rights and remedies. And certainly, I think Eddie has got a far greater understanding of what all is going on at this point. I definitely believe that the village needs to be very involved in those hearings to protect our interests, because I don't believe that the parties involved are that concerned about our interests today, for sure. So the solution to this, I think, is stuck in the courts. I feel like we are stuck with a situation that's going to take time to remedy. That's all I can say about it. I hope Eddie's got maybe a better idea what to do about that building.
I muted myself. Do you have, in terms of economic development, is there an area that you want to concentrate on that you think needs improvement?
In fact, I feel like we make choices that, as somebody said, the voters get what they want and then they get what they deserve. I feel like we invest too much time, energy, and resources in large projects that have not had a great record. I think there are smaller projects that have an easier return to achieve. And, and I won't belabor the point, but I think even when we're considering affordable housing, but certainly from a small business, from the standpoint of a vibrant business climate in downtown Skokie, I think small enterprise is a more efficient focus for the village. And I think that if we shifted some of our energy and attention from large projects to smaller ones, I think that would be more effective for us.
Eddie, do you have a area of concentration you want to focus on if you become trustee?
Yeah. So first thing with respect to the hotel, so my understanding is that that project is in bankruptcy, as Jim indicated. And so what's going to happen ultimately is that the assets of that entity are going to be sold, and a new investor is going to come in and do something with it. What that is remains to be seen. But fundamentally, that is a function of the free market, right? People try and they make investments and they try to make something happen, and sometimes it's successful and sometimes it's not. But that is a prime piece of real estate that I'm convinced that an investor is going to come and turn that into something. And maybe it's a hotel and maybe it's something different. But what has been done in downtown Skokie over the last several years is really, really remarkable. And I think that there's going to be an opportunity for something really spectacular to be there. I agree with Jim that focusing on small business is really the key. And a lot of that is shifting our mentality from the old idea of commercial corridors and people kind of walking to the store from their home. Folks really don't do that anymore, right? They drive to a destination or they shop online. And so creating destinations like what's going on downtown, I think is really the key to supporting those businesses. That people will come downtown because they want to be downtown and they want the vibrancy of what's going on there. And they want a variety of different places that they can visit and they can eat and they can drink and they can hear live music perhaps, or enjoy a cigar or whatever it is. And then while they're there, they'll stop in another store, right? And that continues and it becomes a snowball effect. And we can replicate that outside of just downtown. That can be replicated on Main Street, and that can be replicated on Dempster, and that can be replicated elsewhere throughout the village. But this community has been extremely open to entrepreneurship and people coming in and giving it a go. And we need to continue to do that. And so where I look on the side of economic development is, where's the village getting in the way? And let's identify those opportunities for getting out of the way and helping to facilitate entrepreneurs who want to come in and want to invest in our community, both invest in the infrastructure, but also hire our people, right? Hire our young people to work in these various places so that they gain the skills necessary to start climbing the ladder of economic opportunity. That the pathway from poverty to prosperity has always been in one direction, and that's entrepreneurial-led economic participation. And so if we create an environment that fosters business flourishing, we're going to have more of it. And there's plenty of places around that are not doing a good job of that. And so we become an attractive place to come. Skokie is in many ways a hidden gem, which I love, right? And for those of us who live here, we're going to benefit from that by virtue of those investments being made. And so my focus around economic development is, where can the village get out of the way? And then where can the village provide investments that are going to provide a return to all of our community?
Thank you. So let's turn over to the chat. I'm tired of hogging the conversation. Judy, if you want to ask questions.
Okay. The first question is, are either of you aligned with any other candidates or political groups in this election? And why don't we start with James?
Sure. I am friendly with a lot, lots of the people. I'm friendly with a lot of the people. There's kind of, if I may, sort of maybe two. There's sort of, there's people who are related to the former caucus party that are familiar with it or perhaps related to it in some way. And then there are other people who are deliberately not. And I'm friendly with both, but not truly aligned with either. I think, if that's fair to say.
So you're independent.
Yeah. Yes.
Eddie?
And I believe, Judy, that I think that's demonstrable among the people who know me. I don't think there's anybody who can say, oh, he's ours. I'm not sure anybody would want to say he's ours.
Okay. Eddie, how about you?
Yeah. So similarly, I think that there's a lot of fantastic candidates who are running for office. That there are some that I align with because we share friendship and we share common vision. And so Ozzie Lifskitz is a very, very close and dear friend. And so I'm supporting him for mayor. Manal Desai is our village clerk. I think she's doing an absolutely exceptional job. And so I'm supportive of her as well. And I think that there are a number of at-large candidates who are also really outstanding. Kem Cohen and Joe Nowick live in my neighborhood, and they're both friends, and I think they're outstanding. I think Keith Robinson is really, really outstanding as well. And so I would say that I'm very much aligned with all of those candidates' vision for the village.
Okay, thank you. Next question. If you get elected, what is your plan on balancing representation of your district and the village of if you get and then of course the screen moves. If you get elected, what is your plan on balancing representation of your district and the village as a whole? Eddie, your turn to go first.
Sure. Well, it's interesting because of the electoral reform that this question is very timely. And I would say one of the benefits of the district system is that we can be more locally focused. Having said that, my sense of this village is that what is good for the 4th district is going to be good for other districts as well. Obviously, you're going to have unique nuances, but my duty is primarily to the people of the 4th district as their trustee. Having said that, we all have to make sure that this village thrives together. And so I will be very deferential to the various district trustees because they're most closely aligned with the needs of their specific community. I don't see a whole lot of difference between one to another because, again, Skokie is not the city of Chicago or the city of New York or some very, very large metropolitan area that has massive differences from area to area. So I don't think that there's going to be that significant of a difference from one district to another. And that's something that we'll ultimately have to balance. But this new form of government, I think, allows more kind of give and take and more nuanced views to things. And ultimately, I think that we're going to come to better conclusions or better decisions, rather, because we have that diversity of constituencies.
Eddie, did you support the electoral reform?
I voted in favor of it. I'm originally from the city of Chicago, and so wards are something that I'm familiar with and I'm comfortable with. But everything in this life is a trade-off. And so when we have districts, could there potentially be competition amongst districts for resources? Yes. Right. And under the old system, it wouldn't be that way because everyone is at large. And so you have to structure things at large, right? Village-wide. So I supported it. And I'm interested to see ultimately how it shakes out. But just like we changed it once, it can be changed again. I am a big proponent of experimentation in government. What can we do differently? And let's see what the results are. And if those results are great and those are positive, then we continue. And if those results are less optimal, then we can pivot. So I would support pivoting after sufficient time to identify and understand whether or not this is working and this is really optimal for the village.
Okay, James, your turn.
Thanks, Judy. And I also when our boys were babies, we were in a Chicago ward, and so we're a little familiar with the concept as well. And in fact, our in our ward, the alderman was a pretty great help. And I won't bore you with it, but the fact is we were able to go to his office and there were 2 instances where he really helped us. These changes, these districts that we have now, and I think that when I think about how that's going to affect the way a trustee is going to function, is that what I like to believe and what we always thought would be really helpful is when somebody can function almost as an ombudsman for our little part of the community. And so when somebody, there was just so many people I've known over the years who just felt like they couldn't get anyone to help them in the village. And not because the village wasn't, trying to help them, but it's a bureaucracy like any other. But there was that frustration, and having someone that can help them through the process, I feel, is something that would really benefit our community, really benefit the people in the 4th district. So the first aspect of being a trustee in the 4th, or to me, is being able to help advocate and problem solve for the people, for the businesses and the residents, the little landlords that are in this in this 4th district. And my own profession, the profession I've been in for the last 25 years, is really applicable to that, very similar. Now, as far as balancing is concerned, once day in and day out, people need an advocate. But when we're on a Monday night and we're voting in council, at that point, I feel that the decisions have to be made on a village-wide scale. And, you know, there are ways to evaluate these decisions in a balanced way. Is it the truth? Is it fair? Does it benefit everybody? And is it building goodwill in the community? And if it's not doing that for all corners of the village, then we need to think very hard about whether it should be done at all. And so in answer to your question, Judy, like day in and day out, I feel advocacy for my corner, the 4th district, is going to be more important. But then on village-wide voting, on council matters, then it's going to need to consider the entire scope of the village.
Thank you. Okay, for the next question, I need the two of you to collaborate. We have a gentleman named Brad Blumenthal that's here with us, and he says that he has a question that's a little too nuanced to do in the chat, and he has asked us to ask you himself. Is that okay with the two of you?
Absolutely.
Of course. Hi, Brad.
Hi, how you guys doing? So I live on Floral Avenue. So neighbors. I want to ask about something specific business policy, because I think when you talk about the village getting out of the way, this is something that may be relevant, and I'd like to hear what each of you have to say about this. And specifically, I want to talk about gambling. There is a number of our neighborhood municipalities allow for gaming in bars. The Buffalo Wild Wings at Old Orchard basically runs on their video screens instructions on how to gamble, on how to use sports books, DraftKings and so forth. And I actually read an article in The Economist about a month and a half ago that said that unlike lotto and lottery tickets, these types of gaming and sports books tend to work with the economy. The users of this tend to be more affluent. They tend to be, have better jobs, make more money, and that gambling goes up when the economy goes up and goes down when the economy goes down, which is the opposite of what happens with lotteries, with the lotto games, right? Those tend to be lower income people. They tend to go up when the economy goes down and vice versa. So given that this would be a boon to our businesses, some of them, it would be a boon to our tax base, what would you do about that? What is your position on that? Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Eddie, do you mind if I go?
No, by all means.
Yeah. So, boy, this has been discussed in council, and there was some excellent points made. And Brad, I don't recall if you were maybe there when these discussions were made, or perhaps you saw it online. But there were excellent points made by a gentleman who was there. The focus of his advocacy is against gambling, and I have an awful lot of sympathy for that. I do, and that's where I would naturally be inclined. At the same time, Diane and Desi from the Village Inn have made very strong arguments, and the fact is, of course, their arguments are why this is a safe and a good thing that can exist in the village. And in fact, one of the things that kind of tips the scales for me is the fact that it's not easy for a business like the Village Inn to survive. And they have made a compelling argument that their survival is going to be aided by gambling. And so my personal inclination is against it. However, I do think it can be done in a controlled way, and it can be of benefit to businesses in Skokie that I think are very important to protect. That's my feeling.
I support it 100%. I think that adults should be free to do what they want, generally speaking. And I don't see any problem whatsoever. A number of municipalities have legalized video gaming. And I hate to see our businesses being deprived of that revenue because people will just go across the street. And so to the extent that we have neighbors that allow it, I want our businesses to have every possible advantage. And so I would support video gaming in the village of Skokie, 100%.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brad.
Okay, for the next question. One of the patterns I'm seeing in board meetings is a lack of uniform process in approving projects. What comments do you have about that? Eddie?
Well, I'd be interested in learning a little bit more specifics. I have not noticed a disparity, which doesn't mean that there isn't one. But in any event, there needs to be consistency in how projects are approved. And to the extent that there is a disparity, that definitely would need to be corrected. I just haven't noticed it myself. But it is critically important both for residents to know what their village is doing on their behalf. And it's critically important for businesses or developers who are coming in to know exactly what the expectations are from the beginning. Because that assurance is what provides people with the comfort in knowing it's worthwhile making an investment here for those who are going to do that, and for residents so that they know this is the process by which we evaluate potential projects, and these are the goals and these are the values and these are the requirements, so that there's clarity and transparency across the board. And so to the extent that that has been inconsistent, I would push to ensure that there is consistency. And then also, even if there is consistency, to the extent that residents aren't seeing that or think that isn't the case, well, then the village needs to do something in order to give the residents the comfort and the assurance that they know that there is a consistent process for every business owner that wants to move in, every developer who wants to develop a project here, that everyone is playing by the exact same rules.
Thank you. James?
Thanks, Judy. I'd like to say amen to what Eddie just said. From the standpoint of doing a project in the village, structured predictability is critically important. The ability to efficiently know what's going to happen and when it's going to happen and how to deal with things when they don't go exactly right is super important to anybody trying to execute a project in the village. Absolutely. The questioner might be getting at something that I have noticed in meetings where, in fact, sometimes I think when a legislative body kind of seems to be not acting or deferring action, the fact is, I think sometimes that's done on purpose. In fact, a decision was made, and the decision was made to defer an issue. And that can be frustrating to somebody if they're interested in seeing an issue addressed. Offhand, what I'm thinking of is something that just happened, I believe, last night with regards to if I remember correctly, it was regulation on drive-through windows, and of course codes around a drive-through window that had been discussed a number of times, and there was an expectation that it was going to be executed, and it wasn't. It was deferred again, and that might be what the caller is referring to, and that can be frustrating. But in that particular case, my understanding is that a majority of the board had decided they did not want to act on that. And that it's frustrating, and it probably does feel like a lack of uniformity. If you have a project in which you're going to have a drive-through in that example, you would be left in a very awkward position and a potentially expensive one. So, and in short, I don't think that's I don't think that's prudent. The village should avoid doing that, and that's really the trustee's job. And there was a trustee who said, "Wait a minute, we should be deciding on this. We have discussed it, deferred it, discussed it, and deferred it. It should be discussed, and it should be resolved one way or the other." And I do agree with it. Kicking the can down the curb can be very frustrating to the people trying to, execute a project in the village.
Thank you.
Can I add to that question? What do you think the roles of the boards and commissions are in making decisions that are made usually before it comes to the village board?
May I, Lonnie? Yeah. In fact, the commissions are, so critical, like massively critical. But that said, the trustee position, and one of the reasons why anybody willing to serve as a trustee in this village is somebody that I think deserves everyone's gratitude, no matter whether you agree with them or not. You should be grateful that they're willing to invest the time and the energy to do something like this, because in fact, I mean, the commissions, all of the commissions, but certainly, in this particular case, it would be, I think, planning. Their capacity to advise and inform is enormous and enormously important. But that said, if the trustees do not have their own independent judgment on these subjects, the board's not doing its job. And so, in fact, the planning commission, for example, will come forward with good, clear advice. And I've seen them do it again and again. But the board's job has got to be able to look at it with fresh, critical eyes, knowing that the commission has done a fantastic job in putting together a package for our consumption. It's still the job of the trustees to take the time to fully understand what's happening and make a judgment call.
Yeah, I see the commission's role as being subject matter experts that advise the board of trustees, because the trustees' responsibility is to be answerable to the community. And so the community needs to be aware, right, of what is going on and how the recommendations that the commissions reach are arrived at. But fundamentally, the trustees are the ones who have to make the final decision on whether or not they're going to approve it based on the needs of community, because a particular proposal or a particular development may work based on a technical knowledge or a technical responsibility, but may not necessarily be what the community wants. And so that's where the distinction I see between those two areas are. Commissions should be subject matter experts, where they're evaluating the merits of a proposal in a more objective way. And the trustee's role is to say, does this actually work in the context of our community?
Perfect.
In the context that I was asking is because when I said as a trustee, it seemed that sometimes the commission's opinions mattered and sometimes they were completely ignored. And there was no consistency there. And so I'm wondering, it seems that you would value, both you would value the opinions of the commissions and boards and have some deference to what they have to say. That seems what you both were saying, if I understood correctly.
Well, I would certainly provide the commission its due deference. I think that where we could be better as trustees is explaining our reasoning. So if the commission makes a recommendation to do something and I were to vote against it, it would be incumbent upon me to explain the reason why, right? So I'm not supporting this, even though a commission recommended it for this reason or for that reason. So the community is aware. and I would want feedback from the community based on the commission's recommendation so that I can make a decision in the best interests of the community. But of course, taking into account the expertise that board or commission has in their evaluation of the proposal.
Yeah, and if I may, Lonnie, I feel very much similar to Eddie on that, and would add that, and I'm sure Eddie would do the same. Given the opportunity, of course, everything needs to be aired out during the council meetings. However, a lot of the members of these committees, of course, they're also people who are being asked to do an awful lot with little. And so, I mean, we have to be cognizant of the demands upon their time. But that said, being able to interact with the committees, if for instance, their advice is not something that sounds right to me, being able to communicate with them and maybe understand better where they're coming from, or maybe help them understand why I don't think they're right.
Okay, we have 2 more questions, and I'm going to ask for brief answers so that we have time for closing statements, please. The first one is, from going to village board meetings, what do you feel is something that needs to improve or a process that could be done better? James, go for it.
Golly, I'll think of some way to be critical here. The fact is, I feel like our board meetings are run extremely well, and I think
it doesn't have to be just the meeting. It could be just process, the whole process.
Oh, good, excellent. All right, good. Because the meetings, I feel have been really well run. I think Mayor Van Dusen has done. I just love the way he runs the meetings. I think that both Ozzy and Tennis will do a great job as well. In any case, I like the meetings. But as far as the process is concerned, I mentioned communicating with the commissions, to kind of maybe come to grips with where we may have differences or to better understand what they're advising, but that said, there is an obligation for the public to be aware of our decision-making process, what, why, and how. And I'm not certain that there maybe could be more along the lines of explaining to the public how we're coming to decisions. And that is often done before the meeting even takes place, and perhaps more exposure of that process would benefit people. And that could be done in a number of different ways, but I think even the website would be a good way to do it. The clerk's job is extremely important in helping, in communicating with the village and sharing information with the village. And I think the clerk can do an awful lot to help expose and provide transparency to anybody interested within the village to understand the process, because I do think that would benefit people. So it doesn't feel as though things are just happening in a smoky back room. And I do think that, James Johnston, who is running for clerk, has expressed plans for the office that I think coincide very nicely with that.
Thank you. Eddie.
I agree with Jim that I think that a lot of people in the community don't really understand why a trustee would vote for or against something. And so I'm sure there's reasons, and I'll commit as trustee, I'm going to explain my votes because I think it's important. I think the community is owed an explanation because even if they disagree with the vote that I make, at the very least, they will understand the place from which I'm coming. And then also they'll be able to provide me different feedback. I often say I don't want to be wrong for a moment longer than absolutely necessary. And so being available is really important, but also explaining my reasoning is important, because I think of it like in math, I showing my work, right? So that if there's an error, either in fact or in logical consistency, so that other people would be able to put their finger on it and point it out, and then we can adjust from there. And so I err on the side of over communication rather than under communication, because I think that mitigates against being wrong or being incomplete or being inelegant or inadequate or any other negative quality to a decision.
Okay, thank you. The final question before closing. What is your position on the relationship of the legal department and the screen moved again. The legal department and the village's decision-making process?
Well, I'm happy to jump on that. So I'm an attorney, and so the role of the legal department is to provide legal advice. But fundamentally, the principal, which is the village, right, the mayor and board, are responsible for making the decisions. And so we rely on attorneys to provide us legal advice, but not necessarily policy advice, not necessarily what is best for the village, best for the constituents, best for the employees, et cetera. But what are the legal implications of a decision? And so I highly value attorneys for the expertise that they offer, and for their training and critical thinking and ability to identify risk. And our responsibility as elected officials is to effectuate the needs and the goals of our constituents, who are the residents of the village of Skokie.
Eddie, do you think that the politics in the legal department should be independent as it is in other departments, like the manager's department, where they're not politically involved? What is your opinion on that?
Well, you know, we live in a free country, and everyone has a First Amendment right to engage in as much political activity as they want. And so I certainly would not support any restrictions on any person in this country from having the ability to engage in the political process. Having said that, I think that there is a line between providing legal advice and making decisions on behalf of the people. I hope that I answered that adequately. I'm not sure if there's more to that you'd like me to address. I want to make sure I'm as complete as possible.
There's been an issue in Skokie. We all know that, people are upset that the legal department is politically involved with the politics of the board. And, basically we're together with the prior Skokie caucus party. So it takes a different role than any other department in the village of Skokie. And so the question is, do you object to that? Do you think that they should be independent? I mean, I understand that people have a right to their own political views in their private life, but not so much in a setting, in the village.
I think it's incumbent upon the elected officials to be responsive to their constituents. And so I wouldn't support any prohibition on any village employee from engaging in politics at all. It is incumbent upon those of us as elected officials to not be unduly influenced by any village employee. And that's one of the reasons why I think it's so important, or one of the major benefits of the electoral reforms we've had is that, we're fundamentally all independent. My campaign, you can look at my D2s, and I would encourage people to do it. I have three donors: myself, my mother, and one close friend. No one brought me here. No one asked me to run. I made this decision, myself, and in consultation, with my wife and children and my neighbors and friends. And so it's different now, which I think is a good thing in many, many ways. So perhaps my response is overly legalistic, but I've been politically active since before I could vote, and so I'm reluctant to embrace anything that would deprive me or anyone else from being able to exercise their First Amendment rights to participate in the political process. However, I understand the concern that people may have that that in this case the legal department, but any department would be unduly influential politically over the board. That isn't their role. The role of all village employees and contractors is to serve the village. And the board of trustees and the mayor's responsibility is to prioritize that above any political consideration, but particularly of influence by those who are really servants of the people. That they should not be controlling the government, but rather serving the government.
It is 8:30. I apologize to people for going over time. James, if you could be quick, please, and then maybe a two maximum minute closing.
I will be as quick as possible. Is this on the issue of the legal staff?
Yes.
All right. I'll be super quick because, of course, Eddie's got way more expertise on this than I. And in fact, if I walk in over my head, Eddie, raise your hand and say ixnay on the Eagle stay. So really quick, the fact is, the manager's office does not have this issue. And I believe it's because of the way his contract is structured, or the way that contract is structured. It feels as though the contractual setup for our legal staff could be altered in a way that gives them a better appearance of neutrality. And right now, they don't have that appearance, and it does affect their image in the village, their reputation in the village, and I think that's harmful. And then, and really brief, no, I've said enough. I know we're over time, and I can add more in the end.
So I guess we're at a closing statement time. Does wrapping up anything that you would like to tell us why we should vote for you? Judy, pick.
Jim, go ahead.
Okay, I'll if you don't mind. So the changes that have happened in the last several years. I've heard a lot of really good arguments on both sides regarding these changes, why they're good and why they're not good. I think that the changes that we've experienced have been very positive.
Are you talking about the electoral reform?
I am, Lonnie. I'm talking about the electoral reform. I don't think you
answered whether you supported that, so that's good you're talking about it. Thanks.
Yeah, I thought it was great. But a big reason why I thought it was great, Lonnie, because I did hear people making solid arguments why it wasn't a good idea. But what was good about it, in my mind, is the activism and the involvement and the commitment and the passion of these really high quality people that were devoting themselves to this. And I think the proof is in the pudding, in that we've got so much more of involvement today than we had before. The fact that we're having this call right now is just beautiful and a victory and something that everyone can be happy about. And Skokie is an extremely special place. The fact is, that's I think I've said enough. We're over time anyway.
Thank you.
I'm Jim Iverson, running for trustee.
Oh yeah, put in the chat how people can, both you guys, when you get a chance, when I wrap up, or do it now whenever you get a chance, put in your information of how people could help you and support you and what you need. Eddie?
Wonderful. Well, so I'm seeking your vote because I think that I have the knowledge and expertise and compassion and passion for this work. My community is extremely important to me. I have been in and around government for my entire career. And I think that I have expertise and I have something to offer that is really, really unique to the village. And I am tremendously honored to be able to participate in this process. And I hope to earn your vote.
Scott, you want to give us some announcements what we're doing?
Yeah, I have a couple announcements. First off, thank you to everybody who participated tonight.
Yeah,
And
thank you to the
also,
candidates.
yeah. But every Friday we have a open forum discussion on you can find us on Indivisible, Skokie, Morton Grove, Lincolnwood Facebook page, and we have a link up there. Open forum, open topic, usually a couple hours, and usually have some really good conversations. So hopefully, you know, whoever can make it to that, that's there. We also have meetings on Wednesday. However, Lonnie, I'm gonna throw that one back to you because I think we have a lot of to be announced stuff.
Okay, so this is the first week we actually don't have something planned. It's been a little bit difficult lately getting a hold of people. So Allison Pierce Slovan and Nathan agreed to do the Q&A, although I think Allison's out of town. I was trying to get them scheduled next week and I'm having trouble getting a hold of the trustees from District 2. So I said this the last meeting, if anybody knows their information or can send it to me or knows them, if they want to, we'd like to hear from them. We also are trying to schedule the 219 board, which is having trouble. There's a lot of them running for the school board, so it's hard to coordinate times with them. 73.5 is also contentious. If anyone wants to hear from a certain contested election, please contact us. I'd be happy to work it in. We can switch from Wednesdays and double up because the election is coming around soon. So please let me know. Aside from that, I think that's it. We're at Dan Chakowski's today, demanding action, demanding anything that's cutting Medicare, Social Security, or Medicaid not be funded. It went very well. About 100 people showed up. That's all I have for you guys.
But other than that, and then right after this, we're going to be focusing on the national stage. So because the midterms are right after that. So buckle up because it's going to be a long year and a half. And thank you all for coming. Lonnie, you want to hold on so we could talk about anything we need to talk about?
Sure. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Eddie. Thanks, James.
Thank you all for having
Really
us.
enjoyed
Really
having you
appreciate it.
Thank you. It
tonight.
was a pleasure meeting you.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Bye,
All right,
everyone.
bye-bye.
Bye-bye.